Welcome to Lesson 1 on discovering, rediscovering, or redefining your core values. Just a couple things to keep in mind as we start this lesson. I will be going over each of these questions on this PowerPoint here and putting a little context behind them, which might help you answer them a little bit better or more deeply, but you do not have to follow along. There is a list of questions above. The second thing is you do want to write them down or record them on a computer because we will be using these answers in future lessons. The third thing is that they might be difficult. You might find yourself feeling a little angst or uncomfortable at times, or maybe you want to throw in the towel because they're deep questions, some of them. And don't do it because it's such a good thing if you're experiencing these things. That means growth is happening and you're going to get the results you really want. So keep with it. Have that grit, I guess, if we've been talking about, and don't give up. And the last thing is I would encourage you to have your significant other do this as well. I think there's real power in knowing their values because you will notice they will not be the same. And that is okay. We're all individually different. But I think there's real power in knowing them and understanding life from their point of view as well. All right, so let's take a look at our questions here. So with question number 1, when it comes to peak experiences in your life, you definitely can go far back into your childhood, growing up, and then even more recent experiences. And we often remember these experiences because there was emotions tied to them. Now, they can be emotions that were maybe at first not so appealing, like there was some fear there was hurt, there was disappointment, there was maybe feeling of failure, but then you overcame that, and then there was this joy, and you saw the success that you did, and you overcame all these things. So that's a good thing. So really think about the emotions tied with those peak experiences. And then when I say, what values do you connect with this? You might be saying, well, Jamie, I still don't know what you mean by values. I don't even know what words are values. Well, we are going to get to that, and we're going to talk about that. But I don't want to give you a list right now because I really don't think you get the most authentic answers if you're just looking at a list. So I just want you to think of any words that you can think about that are associated with this experience. They can be nouns, they can be verbs, they can be adjectives, any words that you can think about that you connect with this event. Also do this with your low points in your life. And we definitely connect with some emotions here with those low points. And what's interesting about these low points, it's typically a time where our values were not being met, or sometimes when our values started to form or change in some way, I guess you can say. So if we were in a long relationship where we were continually hurt either, and there was lots of mistrust and things like that, think about how that forms your values, right? And how you move forward. Either it makes you do the opposite and say, I only am searching out for trust at this point, or you may have some hard times there where these values are a little misconstrued because of the past events. So really think about your low points and think about words associated with those low points and those emotions. When you're thinking about your past, because that's what you're really doing here, you're going to think about the environment in which you grew up, or the home in which you grew up, and you might be thinking of specific family members or friends or coaches or teachers, definitely people you spent a great deal of time with. And think about the values those people held or the values that were communicated to you. Also remember that groups have their own values too. So a group of friends, when they come together, there's a kind of an unspoken set of values there. In a workplace environment, there's an unspoken set of values there too. So be thinking about how those have really affected you, or you've internalized those in the past. And this is not a judgment. I don't want you to be judgmental here, because what we're going to look at is whether those values, if you still are holding on to them, whether those values are serving you. Because often, we grow up and these are the values of our family or friends or whatever the situation was. and we hold on to those, but we find that sometimes that's why we have the anxiety that we have, or that's why we have this internal tug or pull, because those aren't the values that are really serving us anymore. And so it's important to reflect upon them and think about them without judgment, though. And we'll come back to that. So how you spend your time and your money, the two things that we always wish we had more of, right? I think it's just human nature. So it's important to really reflect on these. Now, when I say how you spend your time, we all go to work, we all sleep, we all do these things. But you may find you also spend your discretionary time doing these things as well. Work is very important to you, so any extra minutes you have, you are working, or any extra time that you have, you are resting. Maybe for your discretionary time, exercising is your thing, or traveling, or spending time with friends, or playing, with your kids, or being part of a sports team, whatever it is. All sorts of ideas can work here. So just think really deeply about it and throw them down. The same thing with your money. And we all spend money on rent and mortgage and transportation and those things. But maybe that is something that you spend a little extra money on. You really value a home that looks beautiful and clean and organized. So you spend that extra money to make it look the way that you want. And the same thing with transportation or some of these things. So just think about that as you're going through these and writing down your answers to these questions. So for role models or heroes, absolutely can be people in your life. They can be family members, coaches, bosses, mentors, any of these people, but also they could be people you don't know personally, right? Maybe you read a lot of their books. Maybe you listen to their podcasts. Maybe it's a celebrity that you follow. Maybe it's a book that you are reading and it's a character in the book. And I know that sounds silly, but we connect with what we connect with. And just because this person is a fictitious person doesn't mean that their character doesn't portray certain values that we we really value and like to see in ourselves. So just think about those things. And then in number 6, you'll notice I didn't put your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your boss. These are people you did not choose in your life. So this would be more like your spouse or your friends, because these are the people you get to choose to be in your life. So I know this might seem kind of like a silly question, but do you remember how I say that we often don't see, we see others as we are, not as who they are. And I think when there is someone that we don't really hold in high regard, or that we have maybe not as much respect for, it's because in our mind, they lack these values that we find important. So I think it makes great sense to just spend some time to think about, okay, these are people that I seem to just rub me the wrong way. So think about, what is it about them that just rubs you the wrong way? Because often that might tell you what you value, right? And remember, these are values that these people lack in your mind. That's not necessarily that they do or that they aren't those values, but in your perception that they lack those. When I'm talking about alone with your thoughts, so if you're someone who thinks a lot about the past and thinks about the things you could have changed or how you could have been different, or you really wrap yourself in like, oh, I embarrassed myself, or they probably didn't like me, or whatever that is, there's no judgment here, but just, do you find yourself thinking in that way a lot? Do you think a lot about the future and your hopes for the future and what you want it to be? Do you spend your time thinking about the people that have made you mad, or that have wronged you in some way, or situations that just make you angry? And not that these are bad things, but really think about that. Is it, I'm thinking about these events and how they make me so mad or angry, and what I can do to try to change them and make things better, or whatever it is? How do you spend your time thinking? What is in your thoughts most of the time? 5 words or phrases that you want others to use when describing you. This is a really powerful exercise. In fact, Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, talk a lot about like writing your eulogy. What do you want people to say about you when you die? And really the power in that, because that really starts defining how you want to live today. That kind of connects with the last question as well. When it comes to your family or those that you maybe lead or mentor, what are the most important lessons or ideals you want to instill in them as a living example of your values? So that's a deep one, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but so worth your time. All right. So after you answer these questions, keep them close somewhere you're going to find them, because in lesson 2, we're going to look at them. We're going to kind of study them and think about them, find patterns. And I think you're really going to get a lot out of this activity. Remember that I would encourage you to invite your significant other to do the same. I think it could be a really powerful exercise for the both of you or anybody in your family or friends. All right, we will see you back here in lesson 2. See you soon.